Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this very first show of the Oracle Show. Yes, with me tonight, of course, is the lovely Meg. You can find her work also here at beyondmystic.net. Meg, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very good. I'm buzzing off of doing the over 2 hour Astro Woo that you saved my butt on earlier today. So thank you, JC. And very happy to see Sylvia again. I really had a lot of fun doing last week's show. Was it last week we did a
Yeah,
show? Yeah.
yeah.
So very happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming back. And yes, folks, if you didn't see the new Astro Woo for February, Meg did an amazing job earlier today. Even though there were some technical glitches in the background, it all worked out. So thank you for joining us here tonight. And please also join me in welcoming Selvia. You can find her work at intamana.ca. Selvia, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well as always. For now, the energies have been a little wonky. I was talking to Meg about that before, but no, doing really good. Happy to be here and happy to be here with both of you. So,
Excited to
yeah.
have you on.
Thank you.
I love your website, by the way. I love that. I love the blue flames in there, or the sapphire flame. We'll get to that in a little bit here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on Rumble, YouTube, and also on Twitter. You guys are amazing. Of course, this is the brand new Oracle show. We're gonna have a bit of a different format this evening for you guys, and we want to, for sure, take some of your questions as we go as well. So maybe we could take some questions with respect to priestesshood and healing from Sylvia, as well as some astrology, maybe questions or tarot questions also from Meg during the show. So thank you, everyone, and let's get started. Sylvia, you've been deep in meditation over the last 2 days here, knowing that you were coming back on the show. You've had such a wild ride since your first episode with Janine and myself 2 weeks ago. So many emails, so many influx of bookings on your website. Talk about what you're getting now. I love your process here before you go live. You really try to anchor, settle down, meditate to be the best possible channel here for whatever message needs to reach the audience members. What are you feeling right now in terms of energies reaching the collective and what we should be focusing this conversation on tonight, Sylvia?
Yeah, thank you for that. A really big piece, actually, full authenticity here. So I made a big mistake and I actually thought yesterday was going to be the show. So I was like, already. Anyway, long story short, did a meditation yesterday and another one today. But what's really funny was that I actually chose a card and I chose the same card both days in a row. And I have a beautiful deck that I work with personally. It is an Isis deck. And it was really about self empowerment and being within, like staying empowered. And what that actually really means, because there's so many layers to this depending on where you're at on your journey. So for me, that was really truly what my intention is to bring that through, however it's going to come through on this show, whether that's, questions that need to be answered on that or my personal experience with that. But that seems to be a little bit of the theme right now, considering a lot of the wonkiness that is happening throughout the collective. And like, we're really feeling that. I'm really feeling that pull to the spiral again. Right. So, yeah.
Right. Cliff High had a post yesterday. He said, "Be weary of this machine, this matrix right now, pumping up all of these stories in order to recapture you in some type of narrative or paradigm, and taking your eyes off the ball, so to speak." So he said, "Be very, very weary of that." So thank you, Sylvia. That's really good advice. Meg, what do you say? Also, first of all, you spent big 2 hours today looking at the astrology for the month. You had a special guest Janine on with you, also suggesting that February was going to be rock and roll here. Speak about that a little bit. What can we expect moving forward, and what is perhaps some of your advice here to traverse these incredible times, Meg?
Oh my goodness. Well, what Sylvia said definitely just resonates. And as always, with what we talk about, it goes along with what's happening in the Western astrology, which there's very much a theme of empowerment and healing that we're being called upon to do for self-empowerment. February is going to be an extremely powerful month. We're going to have a stellium of planets in Aquarius, 5 planets in Aquarius at the same time, with Pluto that just moved into Aquarius, which Aquarius rules the future, age of Aquarius, innovation, moving forward. We've got all planets direct now since a few days ago when Uranus went direct until April 1st. So that can be calling us. I've been really feeling the shift in energy of that. I don't know about you guys, but all planets moving direct, it feels like any blockages are being cleared. Any things that weren't in clarity are now becoming very clear. And one of the most interesting things coming up in February is we're having a North Node Chiron conjunction, which Chiron is an asteroid that we discovered in the 1970s that we call the wounded healer. And he's currently in the sign of Aries, and we've got the North Node in Aries. And throughout February, it'll be exact on February 11th, but actually throughout all of February, they're going to be conjunct. And the North Node has to do with our purpose, destiny, what we should be focusing on. Whenever someone's doing a reading with me and they're really not in clarity on what they should be focusing on, I always go to the North Node, because that's the key to what we've come here to be embracing. So we're being really guided to focus on our healing journey at this time, and in the sign of Aries, which is empowerment and self and individuality and our foundation. And, we are not all the same. And Selvia was bringing something up really cool before we went on live, bringing up, how in spirituality, there's this, some people have beliefs that every single spiritual person has to be a certain way. There's like rules to how you should be a practitioner. Selvia, you may speak on that. I don't want to take your words from you. But it's very much a theme right now of being empowered and doing self-healing work big time.
Mm-hmm. Can I speak to that a little bit too? Because I've been, Jenny and I have been looking at some of the comments in the last month or two. And although we're growing in the community and more people are coming to the show, specifically on Rumble, there's new people that haven't been watching Ginny and I for 3 years. So to some extent, we appreciate that. There are different comments, different types of questions. People are asking, what is woo? So there's a lot of new people coming on. But there's also comments about, oh, Jean-Claude said a swear word. This is not very love and light, and we shouldn't be watching the show. or Janine said this, and her damn cat's in the way, so we don't want to listen to her. I was like, wow, okay. So it's kind of like there's a weird energy of, for lack of a better word, like censorship. So we're leaving one like matrix, we're trying to express ourselves, build a new world, and there's still these forces that kind of want to put us back into box of be like this, don't be like that, be like this, be like that. I resist all of that, by the way, on my show. I've resisted a lot of that for the last 3 years. But Selvia, let's dive into that here too, because I'm sure a lot of people now in the live chat, they're going through their personal transformation right now, and to the eyes of their friends and their families, they look very different, and it's very possible that they're getting the same thing for their friends and families. You're not the Selvia I used to know. Why are you talking like this? Or why are you meditating now every day? You're pissing me off, right? So let's talk about these energies here and perhaps how to deal with them. First, explain what you see is happening right now in the collective and why perhaps that is, Selvia.
Yeah, I mean, it is, again, a very multi-layered topic, but I can just speak a little bit to my experience of, and I do want to say that I have come through that. I have come through conditioning and programming and belief systems around what a spiritual leader is supposed to look like, right? And I can remember at the beginning of my journey, even just with social media or like following specific people. Actually, I have a really great story about this. So once upon a time, I started following a particular influencer, okay, who was very much into embodying, their version of the divine feminine and like these primal aspects of the feminine. And I was at a point on my journey where watching this happen felt really uncomfortable to me. And it didn't feel spiritual. And it didn't feel good, actually. Again, so I had to stop following, right? Years later, I started following again after I had done a ton of healing and a ton of shadow work and a ton of understanding the different faces of the dark feminine. Okay. And what I feel is that, of course, we can attribute it to things like, religion and what religion did to the feminine, in terms of, what is supposed to be holy, right? And what is supposed to be pure, and all of these aspects that are actually so distorted, because our spiritual birthright is to be human. And like, human is also primal. And when we separate ourselves from these primal aspects of our humanity, right, that in itself is, traumatic and disconnect and all the things. And when we start coming back to those primal aspects, right, it can feel really confronting, or like an assault on others' idea of truth. And I can understand, been there, done that, like totally. I can understand how that feels, especially as a woman. So what I'm seeing right now is this whole, like, spiritual people shouldn't swear. Spiritual people, or if you call yourself a priestess, you should be upholding some form of image that is, XYZ based on that person's particular perception. And I do agree that there is a balance to this. But if my integrated expression of my authenticity is in this way, right, and I'm doing it from a place of love and not fear, then the question remains, is that what part of you am I reflecting back that you're still not comfortable with?
Right.
And it's not to gaslight or bypass, I want to honor that version of truth in you, right? Because that is union, that is love, and that is remaining in my power. It's not to conform to the shame that someone else potentially feels over, my expression, because that's their shame to hold, not mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very deep. I have a few thoughts on that. Let me ask Meg also. You're nodding your head. What would you like to add to that? That's very profound. And I think the shame thing, or the projection of our own shame based on where we're at in our development here, and seeing in others what we would like to see in ourselves, is triggering perhaps a lot of us, as Sylvia is saying here. What would you add to that, Meg?
Well, that was very well said, Sylvia. And it's bringing up for me how we're all kind of effed up a little bit, if you guys don't mind me saying. We've been brought up in this system, right, that is not even 200 years old in the Western world, of how we live, with the schooling, with the healthcare, with the whole system, the whole matrix. It's not even like 200 freaking years old, right? And it has been designed by, we're on YouTube, so I'll just be careful here, but by certain groups of people to disempower us, right? For us to not be in our priestesshood, for us to not be in our wizardhood, whatever you want to call it. And so and we're talking about wounds, and I love this because this has to do with this North Node in Chiron. We're bringing it to the surface. We have a core wound in Western society of not living in community, not living in the natural way, not being in our true spiritual connection. And so it's interesting, because it's kind of like what I was feeling, Sylvia, when you're bringing that up, is it's this core wound that the reason why maybe some people are so nitpicky about it, like, shouldn't you be this way? Shouldn't you be that way? Is because there's actually an emptiness within us. That's what I'm picking up on, to have that, and a confusion around it from our inner child. Does that make sense how I'm saying that? And it's making me, and I'm getting chills when I say this, in this past summer, my husband and I were very blessed to go spend a whole day at the Navajo Nation with a Navajo couple. And it was really, really hot. It was like in the middle of the summer, and I was a little bit out of it because it was like 45 degrees that day. But the whole time with this Navajo couple, information was being shared that was like filling up that emptiness that I have inside of me. of like, wow, this is just the natural way. And there's so much that we have been disconnected from.
Yeah.
So it's all of us just trying to come back to that. And it's triggering and healing, trying to come back to that. Right. And I'm seeing some people in the comments saying, around religion and rules around religion. And yeah, there's a lot of religions that, I don't mean to bash any particular religions, but, have these rules on how spirituality can be looked at. Right. And so that can be projected on the spiritual community as well that we're in, but it's not really religious. The spiritual community, it's different than religion, which is interesting. And I think confusing for some people that might not be in the woo, right? We don't have like a set of rules unless you're in a particular practice of something.
Are we seeing perhaps the effect of the agent Smiths, so to speak, from the Matrix, kind of like popping up in our lives, putting Neo back in the bottle, so to speak? Are you seeing evidence of that in the people at the restaurant or the people at the coffee shops? I don't know if that's a result of some of the products they might have ingested over the last couple of years, or if this is just now the way the Matrix or the system of control is seeing its own demise coming up, and now the volume is on maximum and it's pushing out all of these agents here to try to put this way of life or way of communing or way of being or being authentic in our own selves, our own power of who we are back in the bottle. Let me ask you both, are you seeing that first? Any anecdotes to that, Meg? And then I'll ask Sylvia also.
Personally, I felt that my whole life, trying to stop me from doing things, but definitely within the past year or two, like you're saying, JC, it's like the volume kind of turning up, certain forces trying to stop us from being real and authentic, because when we're in that, this is how spirituality should be, it's a similar energy to what we've been through the past few years, right? If you don't do this, then you can't go to the movie theater. If you don't do this, you can't get on a plane.
What was that thing Trudeau said? There'll be consequences.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Okay. It's good to smile about that 2 years later. We just had a ruling that's on our side, so we're kind of giddy with some of the momentum here. But that'll be for another show. So for now, talk about these agent Smiths. How are they manifesting perhaps in your life also, Sylvia, and perhaps in the lives of the people watching the show?
Yeah, for me, I feel just very tested all the time. And at the beginning of this whole journey, where I couldn't even necessarily recognize it to be a test, it's just more like, why is this happening, right? But I think the more we expand and the more we become expressive and in our authentic expression, the more we and sometimes it's not necessarily just that sort of like the forces of the system. I do feel that we get tested by the universe in many ways as well. It's sort of like, how badly do you want this? How badly do you want this path? Like, there's two sides of the coin, I feel sometimes. And like, I have definitely experienced it. And this is also that invitation to always offer yourself permission. It's the permission that we give ourselves to either continue working towards our expression, to continue remaining in our power, to continue with our discernment, right? We have to continue to give ourselves that permission despite how hard and how uncomfortable it might be to be in that expression, right? So I think it's a bit of both. I think it's not just one-sided. I think it's a little bit of both. It's really for the purpose. Like, again, I see this as really, truly a gift, like a true gift of being able to consistently expand, right? And to become what we're here to become. Right. And I love how Meg was bringing up the North Node into that is what you're here to become. And this piece I recently, and I've done a ton of astrology on myself. And it was not until literally just recently that this piece landed so deeply within me. My North Node is in Leo. And I am nothing like a Leo. just so uncomfortable being Leo, right? Just like, wow, here I am. It's like, yeah, I came here all with Aquarius. That's easy for me. Leo is what I'm here to learn. And so, anybody here who's watching this, who has a North Node in Leo, that's real expression right there. So my testing has been really, really like, okay, how uncomfortable can it get for you to really, really come out? And even doing this show, how long did it take me to come on this show, JC? I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready.
I'm like, oh no, and the audience wants to hear you roar. Come on, you can do this.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's all of it.
Casey says people leaving the Matrix want to drag those who escape back. Okay, so the people who are still living in the Matrix want to drag those back into it, right? Kind of like that crab, that bucket of crab. If one kind of climbs out, all the other crabs pull it back in. Speak about that, Meg, too. Like, how do you recognize that in your life? Because somebody else said, Shanti, she says, well, as soon as I see rules, I walk the other way. And I understand that. I'm very much a rebel, and I think everybody on the screen is too. And if you haven't read the Rebel Gene by Carrie Cassidy, a lot of us humans feel that way. But at the same time, humans do need some type of encadrement or agreements between each other. And at the very core is, I have rights as a human, but they stop where yours begin, right? So that is an agreement in a rule, but it's not a bazillion rules that the government create to kind of control you. That's very different. So there's kind of going to have to be a give and take here as we move away from all those power structures that are crumbling. Now we're seeing it. Oh my God, if you've seen the videos in France today, imagine what they're going to be look like tomorrow. So those systems are crumbling, but we still have to put in place some things where we respect each other and we have a basis here to create the new. Speak about that, Meg, a little bit.
What you just said right there, JC, respect, that word, I think is key. Is that I think with us stepping into the age of Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius is about the collective brotherhood, sisterhood of humanity. And the gift of Aquarians is they can see everybody's perspective. They can be detached and be those peacemakers, those positive water bearers, because they can honor everybody's perspective, even if they disagree. And that's what we need to step into. And that's what true freedom really is. It's not everybody needs to be not vaxxed, right? As an example. That may be what resonates with us or certain people, but maybe there's people that want the freedom to be able to do that, right? And it's about respect. And I think nonviolence, I think that's really, really key. Not allowing, for me in my personal life, what I've noticed is some of those Agent Smiths or whatever that want to bring me back into the Matrix, right? Because they're so triggered by what I'm doing. I'm a professional astrologer. So that's really triggering for some people, right? Because I'm doing what I love. I'm very passionate about it. I'm helping people every day, and it's been an occult subject. So that can be really triggering for people living in the Matrix. They need to do things a certain way for their retirement fund and all this stuff, right? When I notice people trying
the golden handcuffs, they call
the golden handcuffs, when I notice people trying to drag me down, it's when I'm not being respected. There isn't respect. It's when I'm being disempowered or made to feel less than and not brought up, right? That's like your North Node in Leo, Selvia, which I love the Leo energy in astrology, is you to speak out and to be that Leo and roar to aspire others to be their best selves, right? So it's really like I pay attention to, okay, who around me elevates me and who around me puts me down, knocks me down, makes me feel freaking weird when I'm around them. That's that kind of, bringing you back into the sludge.
Right.
So that's what I pay attention to.
Okay. I have another topic on the list. And before we go there, we might have to move the Rumble. I don't know who brought that comment up, but I'll get to that in a second here. Any last thoughts on this particular thread of the conversation, Sylvia? You want to share with the audience before I bring up this other question from the live chat?
Yeah. No, I love this. I think Meg explained it beautifully. It's all about like our inner authority, right? And truly, it's not genuine inner authority when we are trying to control another.
Yeah.
So coming, like truth has so many dimensions and so many layers depending on where we're at in our life and in our journeys on our paths. And yes, there is this, especially, and we saw it. I was this person too. Like especially when 2020 was happening and all the things I was seeing. And, Meg, you spoke about the Aquarius. Well, my South Node is an Aquarius, right? So seeing everything and I, there was this big part of me that was still very much not healed, that wanted everybody to see what I saw. And not everybody can. And that is a part of their journey. And for me to take that away from them because my authority wants to control that is the same energy that the power over system imposes.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really hard. And it's another step into expansion when we can remove ourselves from that, come into our own inner authority, right? And understand that we have to act consistently from a place of love. But it's not this bypass either of, I'm going to just love and light. No, it's, I'm going to remain boundaried. I'm going to self-nurture. I'm going to remain in my sovereignty and express and authenticate from that place. And that is just a teaching in itself. That is, expression, I always say, doesn't have to be voice. It can be just how we be.
It's an aha moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much. To me, in the last 2 years, just before we ask the next question here and switch over to Rumble, I had some friends and family members who took offense to some of the things I was trying to share, like the warnings that I was trying to share, some of the information that was coming out. And I was always taken aback because I was trying to understand why they were taking offense. And during those conversations, they would say a whole bunch of stuff like it's because of the refuseniks that so-and-so is happening this at the hospital or because of that policy or whatever. And I only came back down to the same point all the time was like, well, maybe you don't see this, but I truly believe what I'm doing is fighting for your right to choose, just like I'm fighting for mine. And so I'll continue doing that, fighting for my rights and the rights of my children. And hopefully through that fight, you can choose to do the things that you want to do. And it was funny because that was met with a kind of like blank stare. 2 years later, I'd have to go back and ping those people and see where they're at now because way more information has come out and they've been bombarded by way more than perhaps what we were doing here on the show 2 years ago. But still, yeah, a lot of people are saying exactly right. But anyways, I was surprised by that reaction and the blank stares. Like, they couldn't compute. Like, it was just so funny. And even when I got into like just giving small examples, especially to women, what do you guys don't remember my body, my choice? Don't talk about that, JC, right? So it was so like it was kind of a weird thing. So I couldn't get into those specificities, even though they made a lot of sense. You and I can sit here and say, oh, well, yeah, duh. Or if you talked about les droits de la personne, human rights, discrimination, black, gay, whatever, all these things, you weren't allowed to talk about those things. So I just always brought it back to I'm just fighting for my right to choose, and hopefully you'll have yours, right? And so, anyways, okay, we'll leave it there because it's gonna get a little bit weird. So, Guinness Girl says, "God help JC if he ever does another show on sex again." People will lose their whole shit. Okay, Guinness Girl, we're gonna get into it a little bit here. We have two really amazing people who can get into that subject, but yeah, we've had some trouble here on YouTube for some of this conversation, and this is right up, of course, Selvia's alley, to some extent also as the Scorpio Queen there up there, Meg. So we're gonna get into that conversation a little bit. So let me bring that Rumble link down to the live chat here for you guys. And yes, we're going to disconnect now from YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for YouTube. Come and join us either on Twitter or on Rumble for the rest of this conversation. So let me remove.